It started with what would Laura Roslin do? And now we're asking, what would Sharon Raydor do? Welcome to episode 3 of the What Would Sharon Raydor Do podcast, where we talk with the woman that knows her best, Mary McDonnell, and delve into Sharon's character, her thought processes, and how she gets along with the team. I'm here with Mary McDonnell.
Yay!
Hi, Mary.
And what is your name?
I'm Chelsea. I'm a veteran member of Team BAM.
Yes, you are.
We are happy to be here with you. We want to thank you guys all for listening. This is a very, very exciting thing for us.
Hi, everybody. As Chelsea said, we're very excited about this, and your response has been tremendous. Your questions get smarter and better and more specific, and we'll just keep the ball rolling because we're enjoying this a lot. Sharon is such an interesting woman, and there's so much to. She brings up a lot of thoughts about women, about mothers, about cops, about brave women in the military and in the police force, and women who are out there running things. So, this seems to be a really good time to continue to have that conversation. We're enjoying it. We're going to have some guest interviewers coming up. One of them, I'm sure, someday will be James Duff, and we'll have some cast members to get even more of different perspectives on the kind of things that Sharon Raydor brings up. I'm definitely going to maybe have Kieran on sometime, and we'll talk about the girls on the show, or maybe we'll have both Kieran and Kata, and we'll talk about the girls of major crimes. We've got a lot ahead of us, but anyway, let's get started with whatever questions we have for today.
I guess, first of all, congratulations. Major Crimes is now a 21 episode season for season 5.
Thank you. And thank you, fans. Really and truly, we keep going. We're like the little engine that could, and we grow and grow and grow. And you continue to help us do that. It's just a very exciting exchange of story and fans and the world, and it's kind of fun to be on at 10 o'clock. We haven't lost any ground. I think we've gained some new viewers, and we are able to go into some territory that the 9 o'clock hour wasn't appropriate for. So we're feeling a newness in the show. We think you're seeing it, and we're kind of excited.
All right, I want to go ahead and dive into some questions about this episode that just aired. If you haven't watched it yet, this is episode 3 of season 5, titled Foreign Affairs. Just a heads up, there could be some spoilers for you. This episode was interesting to me because we're so used to seeing Sharon as the rule follower. And you've spoken about her having a very deep respect for the law and justice. Is it the same respect for justice that led her to continue with the investigation when the FBI stepped in to take it back over?
Yeah, it was an interesting deeper look at Sharon. I don't really think it was that much of a departure because, people who respect order are called rule followers. And we've often seen that as, I don't know, like, I wouldn't call it a weakness, but I would say that particularly in the world of crime fighting or, cops, particularly on television, a lot of our heroic cops are those who break the rules, who go about things their own way. Sharon's a unique character in that she really sees the beauty of order, and she really sees that by definition and by giving things shape and by having boundaries that you can actually find your way through a maze to a conclusion, as opposed to what would feel to her like a bit of chaos. So in this instance, in this episode, the FBI wants to take the case back after turning it over initially to Major Crimes because they didn't want people to know that the FBI was looking at a possible ISIS beheading. Sharon and the team, particularly in the morgue scene with Sharon and Amy Morales, Sharon and Amy are starting to hear and see inconsistencies in the case. And they've been sort of on that track a little bit. So they're beginning to suspect that it isn't what they thought. And At that point in a case, it's more important to Sharon to continue to be able to investigate and solve the murder than it is to be obedient to the FBI's need to quickly finish something that they think they know what it is. So there's political reasons for the FBI to need to say, we got it, we found the person, America is safe, there will be no more ISIS beheadings or whatever it is. They're trying to stave the panic that we're all living with. What Sharon suspects is that it's not that at all, and it will be, in the long run, much better for the country to know that it wasn't an ISIS beheading. And so they have to figure out a way to be able to continue to investigate quietly the case. And Dr. Morales has a certain amount of power in this episode, which is wonderful, played by the marvelous, marvelous Jonathan Del Arco, always. So I think in this case, Sharon has foresight. And when she has foresight and she understands that in the long run, justice will be best served by bending the rules a bit, and she understands how to bend the rules within the bigger rules, which this is, she's happy to do it. I don't know if that made any sense. That was a very long-winded answer. I hope you all followed it. If you didn't, ask me again next week, and we'll keep going on that question. Okay, next question.
Woohoo! In keeping with this episode, we saw two very, very strong female heads of departments, and it was interesting to see them kind of butt heads. We've talked previously about women in positions of power. Do you think there's a high level of respect between herself and Agent Soto as opposed to if it was a male agent? Did Sharon treat her any differently than she would have had said agent been a man?
Well, it's a really great question. First of all, I love Annie, who plays Agent Soto. I've watched her since 24, and I think she herself carries power. And something different does happen in a room where there are confident women in the same room. There's a different chemistry in the room than a confident woman facing a confident man. You can't explain it. It's like today seeing Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton at the rally in Pennsylvania. There's something amazing about that. These women couldn't be more different stylistically, but we're still getting used to seeing more than one confident woman in the room, more than one woman in power in the room. And we're just beginning to discover the way in which women decision makers relate to each other, with each other, and if they are in opposition to each other. They don't do it the same way exactly that men do it. There's something else that goes on between women. There's an I know that you know that I know that you know. And that's what happened, I think, with Annie and I, with Raydor and Soto, is that there was we know what we're both up to here on some level. We're both going to keep moving forward and let it slide because there is something about, there's a respect underneath it all. And I think that was instinctively played by both actresses. It could have been more of a cliche. It could have just been these two women butt heads. One wins and one loses. But that's not how we played it. And I think that what we did is more the case, is that women have a more inclusive, I don't know if this is fair to say, I'm not trying to say that men aren't inclusive, but there's something about the feminine energy that is rounder and more inclusive. And the male energy inherently is more competitive and more self-directed. It has to be that way. It is set up that way in nature. So women in power seem to have a more complex, you can't really quite tell if these two women are in conflict. And I think that that is true quite often. So that's what I experienced there.
You know, that's really interesting to me. I feel like boys growing up, they have a disagreement, they butt heads, they beat each other up, and then they're fine. They're friends again, or they just let it go. whereas women kind of have to see all the angles and be a little bit more tactful of how they handle certain things.
Well, when you don't grow up necessarily, although thank God all of that's changed, but when you don't grow up competing in sports, learning how to, kind of push each other verbally, you don't grow up in frat houses where you teasing and taunting is kind of part of the way the male asserts power. So verbal tennis isn't necessarily the way girls grow up. They're getting more and more empowered that way. But I think that what we're seeing in this transition is that women have been so good at listening, because that's kind of what they've been taught they do best, that they listen to each other differently even in a power struggle. That's what I think I'm noticing, and we'll see. We'll see as time goes on and there's more of that available to us to watch and be a part of. And I'd love to hear what the fans feel about this, because there's a lot of you out there who are in high-paying jobs, who are very empowered, who are dealing with this stuff all the time, who are much younger than I am. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. Do you notice something different when you're in conflict professionally with a man than when you're in conflict professionally with a woman? I would love to know what people are thinking out there. It's a fabulous thing to think about.
It's interesting that you talk about how you and Annie played your specific characters in those scenes. We've seen that Major Crimes works with a lot of different directors each season. Can you tell us about the process of working with these different directors? And as an actress, how do you balance taking direction while still maintaining your character's tone and personality?
Well, what's interesting is that it's an evolution. At the beginning of a show, you're all defining character. And so the early directors of a show that's in its first season are usually very much on the inside of the team, so that as you develop these people, there's not someone coming in with a foreign idea that they're trying to impose. At this point with Major Crimes, I mean, some of these people have been playing their characters for 11 years. I've been playing mine now for almost 7. And there's not a lot of unknown to you. Very rarely does one of our guest directors impose an idea that has to be rejected because they don't understand the character, because you know more about the character than the director. So I would say what I like to do, I mean, what I've found is the most fun is you get to know each of them. So because we use them again and again, because we love good directors, and when they fuse well with the show, James and Mike make sure they come back, and everyone always wants to come back because it's a great set to be on. So you get used to the director's particular style too. You talk to different directors differently. You communicate what you're trying to accomplish maybe just a little bit differently, because you know how this director hears things. You know how this director sees the process. And they also, by the way, learn you. So in this particular show, I don't feel any conflict. Very rarely is there a conflict with a director that isn't an interesting point of view enhancement, like that we see it so differently that it becomes fascinating, and then it opens it up to something more interesting. And what I loved about this one is I believe it's the second time, if not the third, but I think it's the second time that we got to work with Nzinga. And Nzinga Stewart, many of you know her out there. She's quite a powerful, talented lady out there in Hollywood. I love working with her because she really has a great sense of the feminine. And she comes at things in a seemingly very gentle, playful way. But she's smart as a whip, and it's all very intended. So it's kind of this nice way of listening to her. It's like she offers a different style, a different vibe on the set, and she's just a beautiful gal, and it's lovely every time we have a woman director, I'm excited. I love all our men. Don't get me wrong. I love them to pieces. But I just like seeing more and more women interpreting our world. That's the point. You know, the more women we have directing, the more we have female interpreters. A different world will get interpreted. It won't necessarily be opposite that of what a man would have done, but it might have a little bit of a little different insight here or there, and I like it. I like experiencing it. It's just a little bit more, what's the word, shorthand with the female characters at times, maybe. Although some of our men understand Sharon Raydor beautifully. So it's just nice to have more girls around occasionally.
Okay, so that about does it for my questions for this episode. But we are going to go to some fan questions.
Great.
Thank you guys so much for sending in all of your questions. They were so great. It was so hard to pick just a few of them. Diana Marie Morrow from Facebook asks, with such a tough and sometimes emotional job, besides compartmentalization, what does Sharon do to leave it all behind? Does she have any hobbies?
You know, I have no idea if she has hobbies because I've never really thought about it, to be perfectly honest with you. But I do know that Sharon likes to be culturally fed. She likes to go and watch a ballet. She likes to go to the opera. She likes to go out to dinner. She likes to go and have the world, the beauty of the world fed back to her. Because, and it's absolutely necessary, and I find this with all the law enforcement people I've met, they like to do things. The guys like to go fishing, you know. It's like there has to be time when you deal with crime day in and day out, and you deal with the painful reality of people making such horrific mistakes and having their lives ruined. You have to find a way to feed your soul with the beauty of life. And that's what she seeks. Does she have a hobby? I don't know. I'm going to think about that one. I'll tell you next time.
I cannot wait to find that out. Who knows? You might share a hobby with Sharon Raydor.
Yeah.
So our next question was from Camilla on Facebook again. She is really enjoying our podcast, by the way, Mary.
Oh, good. Thank you, Camilla.
She says, I really enjoy Sharon and Judge Grove's friendship. From what we saw in previous major crime seasons, they seem to have known each other for quite a long time and to be pretty close friends. In your opinion, where and when did they meet? And how did their friendship start and evolve?
First of all, I just love Ron. He's a fantastic actor. He's really skilled, really, really skilled, and very funny and wonderful. I think Sharon and Judge Grove met through Jack. Jack, as we all know, is a lawyer. Lawyers know judges. They work together constantly. And I think very early on they were friends and possibly, were social friends with Judge Grove and his wife. And I think they had dinners together and socialized. So that at this point in Sharon's career, this is a person who she's watched him evolve as a judge over, say, a couple of decades. And he's a friend. She knows his point of view. She knows his ethical code. She knows his moral center because she knows him as a friend. That creates for Sharon Raydor something which is very rare, which is that she can lean on Judge Grove a little in her conversations with her. And I've noticed that she's a little more vulnerable with him than she allows herself to be in her professional life. So I do think it came through her marriage to Jack and Jack's relationship to the court system and knowing the judge, and he knows Jack. And I think that Judge Grove has watched Sharon go through the divorce, go through a change in career, he knows the kids. So that's what it was. I think they just met professionally and became friends and have maintained a friendship. And you don't learn too much about it, but you can feel it immediately in her scenes with him. And so turning Rusty over to Judge Grove's mentorship and what have you, is a no-brainer for Sharon. That is like, he's the perfect person to let Rusty know where the boundaries are and what he needs to do. And it's delightful, and that does happen in our lives. I mean, we're so very, very lucky when we get to work for decades in the same profession, because by the time the young people that we know, our children and our friends' children, by the time they're stepping into the beginning of their careers, we really do have people around who can mentor the young people that are coming in. And that's a situation. That's their situation.
It's so interesting to hear about Sharon's relationships and friendships outside of the unit. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for touching on that. And thank you, Camilla, for answering or for asking that question. We're going to end with one final question. Julia from Twitter asks, which of the scenes in Major Crimes demanded the most out of you as an actress?
I think that there is, Julia, I think there are certain scenes where, it's funny, demanded the most out of you. Sometimes something that looks really difficult emotionally or something like that are the easiest. The ones that I find the most demanding with Sharon, and that I really look forward to as a result, is when she is tracking one thing out loud and tracking 5 other things in her mind, so that she's multitasking as she's asking questions, as she's investigating someone, as she's gathering information in the murder room that she needs, but she already has a hypothesis that she can't say. That's when she's complicated and requires great skill, because you have to stay very focused as an actress verbally, because it's a lot of it's like legalese and stuff that's easy to forget. And James loves to write these complex things. But at those moments, your subtext has to be equally complex. And keeping those two things moving forward at the same time while serving, your ensemble, and making sure that you're not dropping your lines for your fellow actors, or you're not 2 beats behind because you're still thinking about the theory that you can't say. That's when it gets very complicated and fun.
And how do you prepare for scenes like that?
Well, for me, it's really, really important for me, first of all, to understand exactly what I'm saying and not take for granted that I do know it. Because in that kind of scene, if I think I've memorized the lines, but I really didn't even know what I was saying, those are the kind of scenes where I will just go blank, just completely blank, because I never figured out the top layer to begin with. And I'm too busy thinking about subtext. So I have to first address what is and make sure I know exactly what the action is. I have to know what I'm saying to my other squad members and what they're asking of me and what they're saying to each other. I've got to memorize that whole reality. Then go back and work on what is going on in Sharon's mind that she isn't saying. And then you build that conversation with yourself. It sounds really neurotic, but it isn't. And then you're pretty much prepared to dive in. Takes a lot of prep. Major Crimes takes a lot of prep. It's not an easy show to deliver. And that's part of why we all love it so much, because it's intelligent. So it isn't, there's no way to sort of spoon feed it every week. There's no way to sort of, phone it in. You just can't. You just can't. You'll fail. And that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you, Mary, so much for all of your insight
Oh,
into
yeah.
Sharon and also into being an actress. And I think that about does us for this episode of What Would
Okay.
Sharon Raydor Do?
Good.
If you guys have any questions, please tweet us at hashtag WWSRD. You can comment on any Facebook post with this particular podcast in it. You can also go to majorcrimestv.net and comment there as well. Thank you guys so much again for listening. I'm pretty sure we've said that like 4 times today.
I think you have. I think you have. What's our sign off? What is that sign off we like to do that's like the BBC
Oh, the
one?
PBS one?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm gonna do our signature sign off for you all. Thank you all for listening. This show has been brought to you in part by MajorCrimesTV.net.